music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The Justice Department cannot block the entire affidavit. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. That ruling from a federal judge in the Mar-a-Lago search case.
The same judge who signed off on the initial FBI warrant to search Mar-a-Lago, Judge Bruce Reinhart, has now admitted the raid was, quote, unprecedented and has rejected the Department of Justice argument to keep the entire affidavit under seal. In his decision, Judge Reinhart cited the intense public and historical interest in the affidavit, but the judge is also still giving the DOJ the, quote, opportunity to propose redaction.
That's Fox's Trace Gallagher. Former President Trump's legal team has asked the judge to stop the review of the documents taken in the raid and appoint a special master to review what they should be able to see. Trump attorney Alina Habba says many of the documents are protected by privilege, and the former president wants them back.
Things that are clearly declassified, things that are also privilege, attorney-client privilege from when he was in the White House, things that he should never have been seized.
The Justice Department says it will respond to that motion in courts. President Biden lavishing praise on White House medical advisor Dr. Anthony Fauci on Monday after Dr. Fauci announced he'd leave the government at the end of this year.
For nearly 40 years, Fauci has been director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, and during the Biden administration has served as chief medical advisor to President Biden. Fauci says he is not retiring, but after 50 years of government service, plans to pursue the next phase of his career. In a statement, President Biden says he's come to know Fauci as a dedicated public servant and a steady hand honed over decades at the forefront of some of our most dangerous and challenging public health crises.
Fox's Jared Halpern. Several Republican members of Congress say they will investigate Dr. Fauci if the GOP takes control of Congress in the midterm elections. America is listening to Fox News.
Half a day. This is Clara Manglania from Security Title. A power of attorney can be a useful tool in a real estate transaction, but if abused, it can result in devastating loss. Choosing your representative should be done with the utmost care and should be very specific about the powers being granted. To mitigate loss, the team at Security Title confirms with the owner prior to using a power of attorney to sell the property. Each transaction is unique. Let the professionals at Security Title use our experience to facilitate a secure closing. We are here to help.
We're already Pica's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better. Announcing The Point on Alexa. In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
News.
With the deadline approaching, President Biden under new pressure to forgive student loan debt.
President Biden said he'll make his decision known before September 1st when payments restart, but students are on edge waiting to see if they need to start making payments that they have not been making for months. The Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, though, says simply delaying payments until the end of the year is not free. It would cost taxpayers $20 billion, effectively wiping out the first 6 years of deficit reduction passed in the Inflation Reduction Act. Larry Summers tweeting this: student loan debt relief is spending that raises demand and increases inflation. It will also tend to be inflationary by raising tuition.
Fox's Hillary Vaughn. Police in Oklahoma City have arrested the man who they say responded to an eviction order Monday by shooting the 2 sheriff's deputies who arrived at his home to serve it. One of the deputies, Sergeant Bobby Schwartz, died from his wounds. The other now reported in stable condition. In Dallas, more than 9 inches of rain Sunday into Monday afternoon, blamed in the death of a woman whose vehicle was swept away in flash flooding. It was a bad weekend for air travel. Nearly 500 flights canceled, about 9,000 delayed. The government now looking for ways to ease the burden on travelers.
The Department of Transportation is looking to standardize the definition. They're saying you should get that refund if flights are delayed more than 3 hours for domestic flights, more than 6 hours for international flights. If your airport is changed, number of connections increase, or if your aircraft itself is changed, that would also be considered considered significant. So these proposals are still in the 90-day comment period. That's why the Department of Transportation released late last week more things that they think the airlines should do. They're arguing that customers should get a food voucher if their flight is late over 3 hours, and should also get a hotel if they have an overnight change or cancellation.
It's Madison Allworth of the Fox Business Network. And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
Tell me about it, stud.
Circle K Craft Beer and Whiskey Festival is back on Saturday, October 22nd. We rockin' and rollin' at the Dusatani Quam Resort from 2 to 10 p.m. Bring your friends and come dressed in your best grease costume to win up to $500 in cash and prizes. So bust out those leather jackets and 50-style outfits as we party the night away at Circle K's Craft Beer and Whiskey Fest. Don't be a square. Get your tickets now at craftbeerfestguam.com or cruise on by any 76 Circle K location. Now that's cool, baby.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I love the Constitution. And that's one of the reasons you find me here every day. I really enjoy the opportunity to talk with folks, listen, etc., about our United States Constitution and all of the good things that have happened under it and can continue to happen under it, and how it's absolutely necessary that we keep fighting to defend that Constitution, which is now being attacked as the product of ancestor worship. We should not pay any attention to those old white men who owned slaves 200 and some odd years ago that wrote this Constitution. We need a Constitution for today, not one that was pretty good for the 1700s. That's
it was made for muskets.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go from there, from the Second Amendment, straight to Zemi Ikotny. Now, you'll remember that the design of Zemi Ikotny, which is my bilingual backwards play on words, because the literal translation of Zemi Ikotny is press the meat. I've switched it around to mean meet the press, except I'm so much better at it than Chuck Dodd ever was. When I say that, actually, I'm damning myself with faint praise. That's not much of a standard. But what I have always done with Zemi Ikotny is I go through the editorials from each of our daily papers. I've got my blue pencil here. I mark them up. I look for grammatical errors, English usage errors, and faulty themes for the editorial, and faulty theories. And having done that and finished the two, I will evaluate and give the better of the two the coveted blue star, with the understanding that the blue star never goes by default. So oftentimes there was no blue star awarded. One deviation is that because the two newspapers have become so weak as far as editorials are concerned, the Post gave up 3 months ago. The Daily News gave up, but they're still putting print on paper and filling that news hole with it. But they very seldom write a real editorial. So I've gone to sources outside what you would call our commercial media here on island. Well, I shouldn't say that. established media, and I've gone to places like Candid News for editorials, and I'm proud to say that I've found some good editorials there. And on the editorial page, in the op-ed section of the Post. And because of that, I have awarded so many blue stars to the recipients that they are now the members of the extremely exclusive Bob's Blue Star Club. And that's guys like Troy, Lee Weber, Helen Middlebrook. If you see them on and about town, you might find them wearing that coveted blue star. One of these days, Troy is going to wear that blue star T-shirt on his morning show, I hope. So it's very, I still bring this along more as a matter of tradition than necessity, but let's see what the Daily News is not saying today. Here's their headline. Our view, USDA micro grants for farmers, critical for building food security. I have only one comment here. I'll read it again and make my comment. Our view, USDA micro grants for farmers critical for building food security. In a pig's eye. According to the International Food Policy Research Institute, climate changes, a growing population, rising food prices, and environmental factors have significant impacts on food security. This security, according to the United Nations Committee on Food Security, will screw it up if anybody can. I give you the way they handle diseases, international diplomacy, you name it. The United Nations Committee on Food Security means that at all people at all times have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food preferences and dietary needs for healthy life. This is a human right, right?
Right.
Yeah, so anybody who's a farmer, you better not think about selling your crops. You better give them away to the unfortunate, right? A quick internet search of food security and food prices coupled with Guam's recent shipping issues that left grocery stores short of everyday products highlight a critical need for our community to invest in shoring up Guam's local food production capabilities. A shift in focus towards more locally produced food resources makes sense, both strategically and economically. Producing food, a shift in focus towards more locally produced food resources makes sense both strategically and economically. It makes a lot of sense. This is such a great place to get into commercial agriculture, right? I'm surprised that some of the big outfits like ConAgra haven't been here ever since, right? Producing food locally ensures that we will have physical access to food resources. Just ask Ernie Wustig. A lot of thieves have found physical access to his sweet corn. Economically, it's no secret that nearly every product brought to Guam is priced significantly more expensive than in the U.S. mainland. You know why that is, Jose? Greedy merchants.
I thought you were going to say insular.
The insular cases, yeah. Yeah, well, I wonder why things that are grown in the United States would cost more in the U.S. mainland than would cost more here than they do there. You know, you can ride around Door County, Wisconsin in the summertime. You know those big, black, juicy cherries? Man, I could sit down and eat a pound of those things all by myself. They are so good. But if you drive around Door County at the right time of the year, you can get a pretty good sized bag for $1. You go to Payless, you probably get a dozen for $1. What's the difference? The people in Door County, Wisconsin are just so much more generous than the people. That's got to be the only difference, right?
Got to be privilege.
Yeah. As you were. while shipping and pricing remain largely out of local control. I hope so. That's the last thing I want. Pricing, to have pricing and local control, we wouldn't have to worry about food security because the government would step in and pass laws that would make sure there was no food at all. We can decrease our dependence on more expensive items by producing what we need here at home. Do you think we could ever engage in crossbreeding to the point that we could actually raise red rice? Instead of having to lie about it all the time.
Cross between a achote and rice grain.
Just cross an achote plant with a rice and a rice paddy. That would do it. The need to ensure, but even that, why it would be red,
The water would be red.
Spoil sports would say it's orange, but we know better, right? The need to ensure greater food security goes beyond wallets, bank accounts, and shipping costs. Buying food will become secondary should food availability itself become our primary concern. Thanks to our national and local agricultural agencies, 40 Guam farmers are becoming part of the food security movement. Wow. With the help of the Guam Department of Agriculture, these farmers are participating in the U.S. Department of Agriculture's micro grants for security program. This national initiative assists agriculture agencies in increasing the quality and quantity of local grown food by supporting small-scale gardening, herding, and livestock operations. These forward-thinking farmers are setting a trend for Guam, one that allows local households and families an opportunity to return to healthy, environmental-friendly lifestyles. Can we have a round of applause there, Jose? We commend our farmers for taking this important step toward building a more food-secure community, and we encourage all of Guam's families and businesses to be on the lookout for more opportunities to contribute to the island's food security. So another classic example of people who have the ability to mold opinion, ensuring us that the solution to every problem is the government, especially the national government. So we've got 40 farmers now who are going to get a check from the national government. This has something to do with food security. I don't know what exactly it is. We live on a small tropical island, and I've gone through this so many times. You could raise bananas in Alaska and crab in Peru or Ecuador, but why would you want to? If you raise bananas in Alaska, you'd have to have greenhouses and hydroponics and all kind of stuff, and you'd probably wind up paying $3 for every banana, but by God, you could do it. And the same way with raising some cold water animal like a crab or shrimp in Ecuador. You could do it, but it's stupid to think you could. The time for agriculture is gone by. We don't have land that we can devote to agriculture because we have become an urban community. We have the highest density of any American territory. We're right up there with many of the densely populated states. So what are you going to do with the people? Put them on buses and send them to D.C. and New York? So the laws of economics just don't allow for it. David Ricardo, comparative advantage. You concentrate on the stuff that you can do better here than somebody else can do somewhere else. And that is not going to be farming. The solution, if there is to be a solution, is 40 miles north. Rota, Quilita, a perfect place for agriculture. Fertile soil, level land, not very urbanized, not a very good source of labor. But nowadays, you know, with tractors and some of the modern machines, you don't need a whole lot of labor to farm. But you got to have land, and you got to have a lot of it. So what needs to happen is somebody needs to start thinking about farming in rota. Now, I heard this rumor, and I've never been able to substantiate it, so grab your grain of salt when I tell you this. And I heard somewhere along the line that up until 1952, the military brought all of their fresh produce from rota. But then some bureaucrat said, well, you can't do that because this rule or that rule, and we stopped doing it. And as the saying goes, the rest is history. But if you're going to have agriculture, that's the place to do it. You know, people in Manhattan eat a lot. You know, there are grocery stores and wholesalers, and they eat a lot. How much of their own food do you think they grow on Manhattan?
Now, they have rooftop gardens and community gardens like they tried here in Agania.
Yeah.
No problem with that. But trying to tell people that that's food security is not going to cut it.
No, it isn't.
I understand people have home gardens, and there's nothing wrong with that either.
Yeah, that's right.
But trying to give new names to things, it's kind of reaching.
It is. And it's not, you know, it's not agriculture as we generally understand it. Yeah, it's like having a window box, right? Planting your marijuana in the window box.
And I guarantee you that the FDA will not allow huge corporate agriculture here on Guam because they regulate that too.
Seriously, yeah. Okay, well, again, the Daily News had to fill that hole with something. Now, if you live long enough, you're liable to see anything. I give you now Lee Weber. Lee Weber worked for the Daily News, made a career out of working for the Daily News, worked his way up from circulation all the way to publisher. Was in charge of Gannett in this part of the world. Was transferred by the Gannett operation to run the Honolulu Advertiser. Guy who really knows the newspaper business. He retired and went into the diving business, or maybe he was always in the diving business. But even after he retired, he wrote a column for the Daily News. But for reasons unknown, we can only speculate, he stopped writing for the Daily News and went to the Post and wrote his columns in the Post. And he's a pretty good columnist. Probably now, or until last Monday, the best that the Post had. But we found out last Monday that the new gang over at the Post, that's Henry Titano is the general manager. What's her name? I can't remember her first name. Anyhow, we got
Melissa?
it. Say again?
Melissa Bettis?
Yeah, Melissa Bettis. We got Melissa Bettis as the
editor-in-chief.
Editor-in-chief, and Phil Leon Guerrero as the executive director. A whole new cast of characters over there. The old ones are all gone. The editorials are all gone. And now Lee Weber's column is gone, except it turned up today in the Daily News. Wow.
Oh, nice.
Causing me to ask the age-old question, and Jose, be ready for this, who's on first?
I don't know who's on second.
I don't know is our shortstop. No, I don't know is on third.
On third.
Yeah, when I say who's on first, you're supposed to say what?
What?
Second base. There you go. Yeah, all right. And here's what Lee says for the Daily News. In a democracy, unlike many other forms of government, we actually get to speak freely, have the right to defend ourselves, families, and property, and elect the people we want to be in charge of where our community goes and what it accomplishes. Your individual vote is extremely powerful. As C.S. Lewis said, what you see and what you hear depends a great deal on where you're standing. It also depends on what sort of a person you are. Or even better, as Albert Einstein said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Keep those thoughts in mind as you go to the polls this Saturday to vote. In so doing, hire the employees, meaning vote for the people you decide will do the best job for Guam in the next 2 years for legislators and attorney general and the governor for 4. Guam's economic and political future will be taking its initial steps forward or backward, based on the selections you as voters decide to place on the ballot for the general election in November. Saturday is a day of reckoning for those currently in office, as well as new candidates running for office. Those potential employees chosen, people who the voters elect, will then face each other in the general election on the second Tuesday of November. The questions each and every voter must ask themselves. Come on, Lee. I'll try it again. The questions each and every voter must ask himself as they stand and sit alone in the polling booth where no one can see them is, will the people I'm voting for make Guam better for us all in the years ahead? Let's take a look at history and then ask ourselves what is happening today and what we have the current set of employees, those currently in public office, really done to address those issues. We can start with a hospital. According to Tom Shea in a recent news story, 4 years ago, the current employees in Adelup said they would fix the labor and delivery room areas in the hospital. They said they would make it happen. Here we are 4 years later, and the conditions have gotten worse, although according to Dr. Shea, they did spend around $1 million with architects for design and blueprints for the work. I had to stop here and insert my own comments. Now, since Shea came out with that, I'm going to ask you to explain what this means, Jose. The fart. The fart has been rebutting and slamming Dr. Shea at every opportunity. What is the fart?
That would be Governor LG's Facebook administrative response team.
Yeah.
Something they put together in February.
So they've been all over the place. Had hominem attacks on Shea. The hospital is in really good shape. I had a baby there 2 years ago, and we did fine. Jane Flores, I had 3 babies there, and I really liked the place.
She had 3?
3, yeah.
Not recently, though.
No, not recently.
But we're talking about recent.
Well,
GMA
she's
conditions.
not. These things don't matter to the fart, right? Annie Berdalio skipped over the fart and came right out to the Post and wrote a letter to the editor.
Sometimes the fart will escape.
Yeah.
And go out into the open.
Yeah. Well, anyhow, there's been a strong counterattack. But when it comes to the fart, I have only one ruling to make here, Jose, and this one's been around for a long, long time. A rose by any other name would still smell so sweet. All right, back to Lee's editorial. This is also not a problem, but rather a perennial one that these and other elected employees have failed to properly address for far too many years. Or what about the constant issues of water leaks and poor water pressure throughout the island? Rarely does a day go by when our cell phones do not ring with text messages warning us of water outages or major repair work that is needed that will negatively affect our lives. Or what about the growing problems our island is having with illegal drug importation and the associated problems it has caused with increased crime and the destruction of the family structure? Again, according to recent news stories, we now have more than 600 children needing foster care when previously that number has hovered below 100. Well, Jane and the governor have the solution to that problem, don't they, Jose? They could solve that problem going forward right now. What has really been done to address these issues? How often have you read or heard about your elected employees seriously addressing these issues? giving the seriousness of these issues, much like the hospital, you should be reading and hearing about progress in these areas on a regular and consistent basis until resolved. And then he goes into the Department of Corrections, the Education Department, crumbling facilities. Schools like Simon Sanchez and George Washington High are in need of literally rebuilding. God, that's amazing. I am a plank owner of George Washington High School. In the Navy, a plank owner means someone who is the crew of a ship when it was commissioned. That's a plank owner. I am a plank owner at GW. I was teaching there when it opened in 1967. The glory of teaching in a brand new school. And now we're being told that it's time to tear it down and build another one. I wonder if the word maintenance enters in here somewhere. You know, lately I've been going back to my old hometown every year or two. I have a really important mission. I go back there to find out if nostalgia is as good as it used to be. Well, it's good, but not quite as good as it used to be.
Only history will tell.
Exactly. And one of the more prominent buildings in that little town is a school that was built in 1887. It's a kind of I'd have to say red brick for the show, but it's orange brick. It's got a nice bell tower, and underneath the bell tower is a large round chunk of stone that has the numbers 1887 on it, 1887. And that's where I started kindergarten in 1943. So when I started kindergarten there in 1943, it was already 56 years old. 56 years old. And it was fine, you know. And kids went through that building year after year after year. Now, the guy sitting over there in the lazy boy, you know, the guy that has all the answers, he said, yeah, maybe the building was in good shape, Bob. You obviously didn't learn much, did you? Yeah, so, and that building is still standing. It can't pass some of the ADA stuff anymore, some of the other stuff, but that's where the district office is located in 2022. And how is it that something can last so long? Of course, it's not in the tropics. That makes a big difference. But we just don't take care of the stuff we have.
It's maintenance.
It is. You know, I think there are only two buildings on the island that predate World War II. One is the library, which was a hospital back before the war. And the other is that little, very small building out in the parking lot behind the cathedral.
Yeah, there's a tree growing through it now.
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah.
That's how old it is.
Yeah, that one. And there was a third one that was built during the war. There was a cistern on Buck Cruz's property down in Molesu, built by the Japanese, which made it offensive to Buck, so he had it torn down. Yeah. Did you ever get to know Buck Cruz?
I did not.
Yeah, I never had an uncle like Buck Cruz, but I darn sure wish I would have. All right, let's take a short break, Jose, and we'll come back to Lee Weber's column here.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point. Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
Si Tomas Nario Batnado, Guahidonia pickup truck. Yeah, lo ti tunguno hafa kolotnya. Kosinya, Tomas Kosinya I kolot I pickup mo kolot kahit pet kolot pet agaga. Put for what sangani do dani todu na tailgaters ki Facebook. Si do asmasi. You remember our red pickup from yesterday, Jose? Yeah. All right, back to Lee's column here. He says, ask yourself, look around and ask yourself, has our island and the quality of life really improved during the last 4 years, or has it and your family suffered more than in previous years? No question. You know, we had 2 years of abject suffering this year. Yeah, you can't mask the truth, Jose.
They tried.
Yeah. Remember, the federal government has poured some $2 billion into government coffers during this time. That's $2 billion tax dollars, but not our tax dollars, thanks to the insular cases. Are you listening, Keneal Weird? Do not allow the current set of elected employees in Antelope, the legislature, and the Attorney General's office to buy their way back into office with last-minute cash giveaways, barbecues, or more empty promises. And if that happens, whose fault would it be? Did we as owners of our government and the bosses of these employees push them to ensure they did their jobs? Did we as citizens put pressure on the Fourth Estate, the free press, to do their job of acting as a watchdog on government? We try every day, but it's a tough job. It's time for change, Guam. Vote to make Guam great again. Yeah, well, the problem, and I can't disagree with anything you say, but I don't see anybody, who's a challenger saying what needs to be said. They go to rallies and they stand beside the road and wave, but who stands for what? I heard Sam Mabini near the end of her political commercial say she's for part-time legislature, which is an important enough issue by itself. That could be a single issue. But I haven't heard anybody come out and say, vote for me. I will introduce and support legislation to build a new Department of Corrections, to put more cops, to whatever. I just haven't heard it. But of course, most of them will tell you that they're in it because they want to help the people. Don't help the people. Do your job. Okay, so let's see what we got on the card for today. I have, let's see. I got Anderson Air Force Base versus a stranger. We got to pop that one on the screen again, Jose. I've got Brown versus Torres. This is a short one, and I want to get into it before I go back to politicians versus innocent, helpless humans, which is a pickup on Levin versus Bell's Law. And if I'm able to get through that, I've got Doug versus Levin, which is a pickup on Levin versus Joey Tatlahi. Priscilla Tuncap versus the Civil Service Commission. Voti versus false raised narratives, and so on, if I get that far. And, of course, I start out with the Public Law 36-34 session of the agenda. I'm looking at the municipal Mangilao Municipal Planning Council public notice, the announcement of their meeting for today at 6 p.m. at the Mangilao Community Center. And item number 8 on their agenda is new business. Wow, I wonder what they're going to take up. Will they be voting on it? Guys, you got to put that in your agenda or don't put new business in there. This is, back to Lee's column. What does it take to get people in public positions to do their jobs, even the simple ones like this? Okay, next on the list here is the Port Authority of Guam. And here's what the Port Authority is going to do. Item number 5, old business. Do you know what the old business is, Jose?
No idea.
Neither do I. Neither do I. Same problem. Then we have the Guam Solid Waste Authority Board of Directors meeting, which is today at 1 o'clock. No, Thursday at 1 o'clock. And on their list of things, they've got item number 8, new business. But apparently it's a secret because they're not telling us what the new business is going to be. And we have, and where's our Attorney General? You could assign a clerk to go through and do the same thing I do every day. You could have a form letter with some boxes to check. You could email that out to people, and you could fix this, Leon Camacho. But he can't fix anything because you know why? What he's planning on? He's planning on leaving office next year. And I'm helping him with his travel plans. And then we have the notice for the meeting of the Public Defender Service Corporation's Board of Trustees. And they have item 7, new business. But they can't defend their new business because they're not telling us what it is. We have, boy, it's a full plate today, isn't it? Mayor Anthony P. Chargaloff, Jr. of Inalahan announces a meeting of his planning council, and he's got 1, call to order, 2, secretary's report, 3, treasurer's report, 4, public comment. Shows a consideration for his villagers. If you got something to say, you want to sit and listen to all of the boring rap from or do you want to just be able to say what you got on your mind and go?
I'll pick number 2.
Secretary's report. Okay. Number 4, public comment is 3 is treasurer's report, 4 is public comment, 5 is mayor's report, 6 old business, split unit quotes. Apparently they're buying some air conditioners. B, resolution submitted to Mayor Savaris. I hope they're saying, Mayor Savaris, come down here and look at the roads that run through Inalahan and look at that trash heap called Marine Corps Drive that runs north of your village. See if you can learn something from that, Madam Mayor. And then he's got item 7, A, village entry signs. B, LED digital board. C, Chief Godow Festival. D, consideration for resolution application 2022-02, change in bank signatures. I know what they're going to do there, right? And then 8, open discussion. 9, next meeting. 10, adjourn. He did everything right. So, Angel Sablon, when you aren't busy testifying for criminals at sentencing hearings, why don't you give the floor to Mayor Anthony P. Chargaloff, Jr., who seems to have a handle on what it means to be a mayor. He's doing a great job. There's only one thing with Mayor Anthony P. Chargaloff, Jr., one thing only. He's an Inalahan and not Jigo.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I'm hard on the mayors, but if I'd ever had a good one, I wouldn't be. But we've never had a good one in Jigo. Mayor Robert Lizama, the Chalon Lahuna that runs from Marine Corps Drive to Route 15, also known as the back road to Anderson. This is a Robert Lizama story. When Paris Acres was built, a gravel road was built from Route 15 down to Paris Acres because the construction companies are out there in 15, the gravel pit and everything like that. So that the trucks wouldn't have to make a circuitous route, they built that gravel road. When Paris Acres was finished, they went out and put a berm there, no traffic down that road. 5 years later, you wouldn't even know there'd been a road through there. Then another outfit came along to build something called Goring Villa. And they did the same thing for Goring Villa. Oh, I could understand that. It made a lot of sense. But when Goring Villa was finished, Robert Lizama took it upon himself to work with the government to pave that road. So they paved it. They didn't do anything else with it. They didn't mark it. They didn't put signs on it, etc. So now all of that traffic comes down this narrow little 2-lane road to get from the back road down to Marine Corps Drive. It's just a horrible nuisance. There are 15 other things they could have done, but and of course you know what Robert did as far as the people who lived on that road? Not a thing. We found out that he was doing it when it was done. That's what I mean. I just have had bad experiences with the mayors of Gigo. Rudy Montanani was the mayor of Gigo, and I'm embarrassed to say this. Rudy was a notable Republican. When he ran, I said, I'll help you, Rudy. I even stood out there and waved, vote for Rudy, etc. Within 6 months after being elected, Rudy took a junket to the Philippines for some village fiesta in the Philippines.
Is that the strawberry fields forever?
It wasn't even that. It wasn't even
another one.
It wasn't even that legitimate. It was just him. But he was so important that he got the mayor's council to approve staffing. He couldn't go by himself. He had to have staffing. So the mayor's council directed Angel Sablon to staff Rudy when he went to this village fiesta. And that wasn't bad enough. He took pictures and he came back and got really good earned media in the Biennial magazine that comes out every week in the Daily News. I was so embarrassed, Yeah, that's just the exact opposite of what I expect. You don't run for office because you want to junk it on my nickel. So that's what I mean. I could go on and on and on, but no good bears at all in Gigo. I don't know. Maybe going back to Lee Weber, maybe it's something in the water. All right, last item here. Again, the Thursday, August 18 meeting of GITA had this item on the agenda. X, new business. B, ratification of resolution 22-19 relative to ratifying action taken at prior board meetings from July 22, relevant to waiver of notice and consent to take action by unanimous consent relative to approving the selection of the Bank of Guam as financier for RFP 22-001. And taking, this thing is just, it's a textbook case. This looks like a law school exam. How many violations of the open government law can you find here? How many violations of corporate law can you find here? But Troy indicates that he's got it, so somebody's got to do something with that one. All right, let's take a short break here.
Joyce Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning show.
Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle.
Daryl Lizama grooves his way through Boss 104 playing Guam's favorite classic hits.
Morning Mouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapat, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all three.
671-888-7346. That's 888-REIO.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
So here we go. On the card, first item, Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. I think everybody has got that one down. The red rice is the narrative. Orange rice is the facts and the truth. Once again, this is what orange looks like, and this is what orange rice looks like. Neither one of those things is red. Going on to the next item on the card, I've got an article from the Post, funding provisions for OPA adopted. I've got this on the card as Brown versus Torres. This isn't the Hatfields versus the McCoys, but it's the best we can do on short notice. Lawmakers have adopted a continuous funding measure for the Office of Public Accountability, as well as additional funding for the agency in fiscal 2023 as they continue to debate the Budget Act for next year. A little background here. You know, BJ is the guy who goes around doing audits and finding people that do stuff, government officials who are doing stuff that they shouldn't do. As an example, he uncovered the fact that the governor did not obey procurement laws, even her special procurement laws, under her state of emergency when she sent her consigliere, that is her son-in-law, to negotiate a contract with the Pacific Star for the 19th floor. And BJ laid out all of the laws that were broken, etc., and there was a lot there. So you would have thought that our Attorney General would have scooped that up like a highlight player and returned that to the courts. But what did our Attorney General do? He ignored it. He filed a complaint with the Superior Court for a declaratory judgment asking that the court declare that the way the governor had handled 4 procurements was okay. The 4 procurements that were in his complaint were not the one that BJ ticked on. The 4 that BJ said were okay. The case didn't have real defendants. It was not a case. It was just, made up. Just something that Levin wanted to do, apparently to help the governor. So that kind of started people talking about BJ, and BJ comes forward and says, I'm doing the job, but I don't have a dedicated funding source. And since I'm in the bad news business, there's always a chance that my funding could be cut so that I can't go out and find the people that are doing things that they shouldn't be doing. And he also said, I can't pay good enough salaries to attract the kind of people to do my job. I need to be able to change the salaries in my office. So people picked it up. I did. I spent a lot of time on the show talking about it. I gave BJ high marks all the way around, made my own recommendation, even wrote a op-ed for the Daily News as to what ought to happen. So Senator Brown picks it up. And here's how the story goes. The funding amendment was proposed by Senator Joanne Brown. and Vice Speaker Tina Rose Munga Barnes. It contains some similar provisions to a measure previously introduced by Brown and Tello, Bill 302-36, which was intended to enhance the independence of the OPA. The Brown-Barnes amendment grants $371,602 in additional funding for the OPA to utilize in fiscal 2023 using unappropriated monies in the fiscal year's general fund. Like Bill 302, the Browns-Barnes amendment also creates a permanent appropriation for the agency, mandating that from fiscal 2024 onward, the OPA receives a continuing annual budget of no less than 25%, as you were, 0.25% of the annual total general fund gross revenues. I got to jump in here again. This is why we need a constitution, because there's a statute that says BJ gets 0.25%. That can be wiped out with 8 folks, and the governor can eliminate that in a heartbeat. If it were in the Constitution, it would require an amendment to these are the kinds of things that belong in constitutions. And that's why we need one now. We don't need to wait until everybody who is alive right now is dead and we finally get the kind of political status that somebody wants, beep, beep, before we adopt our own Constitution. Anyhow, that's what the Brown bill does. The Brown amendment. The provision did draw concern from Senator Mary Torres, who runs as a Republican, end of story, who noted that appropriations to the OPA can increase as general fund revenues go up as well. Mary Torres is a mathematical genius. I never would have thunk it. Yeah. So it's not a fixed appropriation, and it's not a projected appropriation. So I have concerns about that, and I believe it's not correct to award them that sort of leeway. Torres said, as then she alluded to the floor amendment that she would make if the Brown amendment were voted down. Beep, beep, because she didn't say that at all. No. The senator also expressed concerns with another provision of the amendment, which mandates that the public auditor administer funds deposited by autonomous agencies or instrumentalities for their annual audits. Now, this is really important because the way it goes now, BJ doesn't do all the auditing himself. He enters into contracts with independent auditors, which is good for a couple of reasons. One of which is that it makes it much harder for somebody who gets nicked with an audience to holler, fix politics. Because, CPAs, I think, are pretty hard to fix, somewhere between extremely hard and impossible. Because, being a certified public accountant means that when you sign off on a financial document, you can literally take it to the bank. And if the CPA plays games with it, he loses his ticket, which for a CPA means an awful lot of money. Okay, so BJ says the problem we've got right now is I contract with these auditors. Government agencies don't cooperate. The auditors have a hard time finishing up by their deadline. They don't want to turn in an incomplete audit, so they just tell BJ, I got to have an extension. BJ says, come on, you guys, come on. And they say, I can't make the government perform. Now, if BJ administered the funds himself, when the auditor turns it in on time, they get paid. If the government didn't do what it was supposed to do, then they bear the burden of that. And when the auditor comes out with his findings, the agency gets a chance to reply. They can say, well, the auditor missed this, correction there, and that's what they're not doing in a timely fashion. They're dragging it out. They're stalling it. So this is probably more important than the 0.25% set off in the budget. But Mary doesn't like it. And she says this, I know that it perhaps is a control measure by the auditor, but I just believe in the ethical world of audits, that the credibility of an independent auditor is exactly that. So I don't agree with Section 3, also in giving him the purview. Where would you start on something like this? Now, this is a senator. Yeah, Lee's column. You know, I go even deeper than Lee's column. I expect him not only to do the right thing, but I expect him to know something. I expect them to have a body of knowledge that they acquired before they ever ran for public office. In a lot of cases, that means formal education, college, specialty training, etc., but not necessarily. I've seen some people that had a tremendous amount of knowledge, you know, that maybe my Uncle Elmo finished 8th grade, and he was as smart a guy as I ever knew. He was the only guy that I ever knew that at 89 years old in Elkhorn, Wisconsin, back in the 80s, was reading the Wall Street Journal. All right, let's break for the big halftime show, and we'll come back to Barnes versus Torres.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
He wants oversight of the documents. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Former President Trump going to court to try and limit the Justice Department's ability to go through the documents seized in the raid on his Florida home.
The Department of Justice had said they removed 11 sets of classified documents, some labeled top secret, from Mar-a-Lago. Now, Trump's attorneys have filed a motion asking that further review of what was taken from his home be stopped until a special master is appointed in his case. The motion asks for more details about what was taken and that anything taken outside the scope of the warrant be returned. The court filings say politics should not get in the way of the administration of justice, adding that Trump is the leading potential Republican candidate for president in 2024. His attorneys add there was no need for such a search and details Trump's discussions with the National Archives for return of certain documents.
Fox's Jessica Rosenthal, the judge in the case, ruling Monday to reject a Justice Department motion to keep the entire affidavit in the case secret, but he will allow them to suggest what parts should be hidden before the affidavit is unsealed. Dr. Anthony Fauci has announced he'll leave his government jobs at the end of this year, 2 years sooner than he'd said earlier. Republican Louisiana Senator John Kennedy says if the GOP retakes control of either house of Congress, they'll subpoena the doctor to answer their questions.
We're going to ask him questions about gain-of-function research, why he didn't push back on China's lies, why he pushed back so hard on the possibility, which we know is now real, that the virus originated in a Chinese lab.
Senator Kennedy on Fox's Hannity. New emails obtained by Fox News Digital show that Special Climate Envoy John Kerry engaged in several discussions with left-wing environmental groups before making policy decisions, but those emails don't show any corresponding talks with the fossil fuel industry, which President Biden, as a candidate, had promised to put an end to. America is listening to Fox News.
There is no denying that these past 2.5 years have brought unprecedented challenges, where our health, safety, and way of life have been completely upended as a result of COVID. Having served as governor during many challenges, I know a thing or two about the importance of strong and steady leadership in times of crisis. Trust me when I say that I have full confidence that Lou and Josh are the leaders Guam needs at this pivotal time in our history. Lou and Josh have led our island through some of our darkest times, and because they stayed the course, our island is on the verge of a recovery that will infuse life back into an economy thirsting for a fresh start. I've said it before, and I mean it still. People of Guam, you're still the one.
This is Governor Lou Leon Guerrero, and I approve this message.
New opinion surveys suggest nearly 3 out of 4 Americans are unhappy with the direction of the country.
Poll numbers showing a shocking number of Americans believing that the country is headed in the wrong direction less than 3 months before the midterm elections. We're talking about a whopping 74% of Americans say the country's on the wrong track, while just 21% believe the nation is headed in the right direction. That according to a new survey from NBC News. 58% say they feel more worried that America's best years may already be behind us. As for the economy, it tops overall concerns with nearly 7 in 10, 68% saying they think the country is already in a recession, despite the president's claims.
Fox's Kevin Cork. The midterm elections are now 76 days away. A South Dakota ethics board says it has found sufficient evidence that Governor Kristi Noem may have engaged in misconduct when she intervened on behalf of her daughter, who was applying for a state appraiser's license. The board hasn't specified what, if anything, they will do next. A sheriff's deputy in Oklahoma City killed in the line of duty Monday. Sergeant Bobby Schwartz and another deputy were shot while trying to serve an eviction notice. The other deputy now reported in stable condition. The accused shooter is in custody. In Georgia, a bus driver accused of drinking before taking the wheel and then crashing with students on board.
Many parents are speaking out.
He smelled like alcohol.
They're reacting to bus driver Jeffrey Tucker. He's accused of veering off the road and crashing with a vehicle full of elementary school students in his care on Friday.
And had that been anywhere else on this mountain, they would have toppled over.
Many are calling on the Pickens County School District to institute a better vetting process for bus drivers. Tucker is now charged with a DUI and 40 additional counts of reckless conduct. The school district says they'll conduct a full investigation.
Fox's Tom Graham. And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning show. Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle.
Daryl Lizama grooves his way through Boss 104 playing Guam's favorite classic hits.
Morning mouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapat, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all three.
671-888-7346. That's 888-REIO.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services that you choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
So here we are, this big halftime show here on Tall Tales. Jose did another excellent job of producing that halftime show. Congratulations, Jose. And now we're in the second half of Tall Tales, and I'm going to finish up this article here, Brown versus Torres. And then I have a phone call from Harvey Egna, who wants to talk about auditing. It seems to me, I recall that he has some auditing in his background, so he may know a little bit more about it than Mary Tort. No, wait a minute. I'm damning with faint praise again. Here we go. Here's what Brown said. Now, even more, as we are addressing this current budget that's over $1 billion, I think our people have an expectation that their money is being properly spent and spent in their interest. And the key office that was created to do that is the Office of Public Accountability. She added that the OPA has not been granted the resources it needs to ensure that it can execute its responsibilities. So good floor amendment, Senator Brown. All right, we'll go now to Harvey Egna. Go ahead, Harvey.
Hey, Judge Klitzkie, thank you for taking my call about the exciting topic of audit. I think we're headed in the right direction, and it's going to take a change in the culture of management of GovGuam to accept audit as a partner as opposed to being an adversary. I recall reading a couple of weeks ago that one of our external audit partners, I'm not sure if it was Deloitte, had conducted a follow-up audit on one of our departments and found a deficiency, and this was the second time they found the same deficiency. In other words, the first comments had not resulted in a correction. In private industry, that manager would be looking for another job. Certainly in the banking world, that person would no longer be employed. And I think we need to get used to running our government by the auditors. I spent 35 years in banking, and sure enough, every year I spent a significant amount of time with the auditors from 4 different agencies, federal, state, depending on where the bank was located, our own internal auditors and external auditors such as Arthur Andersen and Deloitte. And the very first item on my performance review was to do with the audit comments. If anybody in a senior position in the bank had the same audit comment mentioned twice, you were generally starting to look for a job over the weekend. And we certainly shouldn't be telling auditors to come back because the books aren't ready. That's an indication that you're not managing your department properly. So I think, we're headed in the right direction as far as making our departments more accountable to the auditors and funding the auditors properly, and again, holding them accountable. And after all, we're looking at a $1 billion business, a $1 billion government. And we need to have that level of oversight. It's not going to come overnight, but I think we're definitely moving in the right direction. And we need to continue to fund the audit process in our government to satisfy the people that their money is being spent properly. And then we do need to hold our department managers' career accountable to their audit results.
Well, Harvey, if you had been in the legislature during the time that Torres and Brown were working on this bill, what would you have said on the floor?
I think Joanne Brown is spot on. I think we need to drive the Office of Public Auditor toward more independence, toward having the financing that we're providing to them. Whether the 0.25% is adequate or not, I'm not sure. I guess time will tell. And we need to bring in outside resources also, besides our own internal auditors. And we have some salary issues with them. Hopefully we can correct that. But we need to bring in some outside resources too to help with the workload. And again, start to change the culture to make those department managers accountable. Hey, you know what? You get some audit comments, we expect you to correct them. If they're there a second time, you just resigned. And
well,
start to take.
So what kind of legislation would you introduce, Harvey, to make sure that these things happen?
We would make it career accountable for such things as having negative audit comments for the same operational or fiscal item twice in a row.
These are really good ideas. A little earlier in the show, I went through Lee Weber's op-ed piece, and I said, I don't hear anybody who's running for office talking about the things that Lee Weber's talking about, nor about, Brown versus Torres here. Mm-hmm. So I'm always been one to turn the rascals out, but I'm looking for some some real campaigning. Please vote for me, and this is what I'll do. Not please vote for me because I really want to be a senator.
Yeah, audit's not the most exciting, topic to bring up at the cocktail party, but it is there in my platform. if you look at my Facebook and dig through it, I do have it in there.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time looking through people's Facebooks. I'm sure that's a really great campaign device. I'll tell you what, though, you said that auditing is not the greatest, the most interesting topic at cocktail parties. I'm going to tell you my CPA joke, Harvey, if you don't mind.
No.
So there was a hot air balloonist. He was flying through the air, and all of a sudden there was a leak in his balloon, and he crashed in the middle of a farmer's field. And the crash knocked him out. And he was out for about 5 minutes, and when he woke up, he saw that there was a man leaning against the edge, the rim of the basket, looking in at him. And the balloonist said to the man, he said, "Where am I?" And the man leaning on the basket said, "You are in a wicker basket in the middle of a farmer's field." And the balloonist said, "You know what? You must be a CPA, because everything you've told me is absolutely true and totally useless." Thanks a lot for calling, Harvey.
Thanks for taking my call, guys.
All right. So, yeah, you know, my grandma's joke, my grandma Harlow, right? She and my mom were riding down the street in Burlington. This is way, way back. And my mother says, "Who's that guy over there? I think I know him." And my grandma said, "That's so-and-so." And my mom said, "Gee, I wonder where he works." And my grandma says, "He works at the Bank of Burlington." My mom says, "How'd you know that?" "It's not raining and he's carrying an umbrella." All right, who am I going to pick up? And where do I go next here, Jose?
Let's see, CPAs, accountants, bankers.
Bankers, yeah. All right, let's go back to abortion. We've got, I left off with Joe San Augustine yesterday, but before I get to that, I want to go back to, if I can find it. Just give me a second here while Jose's answering the phone. I'm going to have to go online to get what I'm looking for. Give me a minute here, Jose. Yeah, I'm almost there. Just give me a second here. Yeah, I'm going to go back to my column from the Post. I know I spent some time on it yesterday, but I'm going to do it again today for a couple reasons. Oh, thanks. For a couple reasons. One, I wrote it, so I kind of like it, a little pride of authorship. And two, it's a message to all of the anti-abortionists out there that the game is not over. Just because Levin came up with an appointment, an opinion that I think is potentially flawed, doesn't mean we have to say, well, we can never resurrect, Bell's Law will never be resurrected. And that's what this column's all about. So I'm going to go through it again. Attorney General Levin Camacho marshaled enough judicial authority to employ the magic words, quote, void ab initio, to Deep Six Public Law 20-134, former Senator Bel Ariola's anti-abortion law. Void ab initio means having no legal effect from inception. A law, agreement, sale, or other action that is void has no legal effect. A void action cannot be ratified or validated. End of story, right? Maybe not. The answer one gets depends on the question he asks. Here's what Levin said, quote, "We limit our opinion in this case to instances where laws are passed in clear violation of established constitutional rights." So Levin limited the question. But try this. Type in this, quote, "effect of an unconstitutional statute," close quote, on Google search. The first hit you'll get is an ancient Indiana University law review. Thumb through the pages and you'll find this entry, quote, "The theory that the statute is void ab initio should be tested. Suppose a case where the court declares a statute unconstitutional today and then 6 months hence reverses this decision and decides that the statute is constitutional. If the void ab initio doctrine be applied, the first decision would leave a situation similar to that described by the Indiana court as if no statute had been passed." But all courts, going on with this law review article, all courts seem to agree that the void statute is resurrected and is effective as from the date of its enactment. The purported enactment, which was said to have been fatally smitten at its birth by the Constitution, has by some legal hocus pocus been cured of its congenital disease. This is the Indiana rule. So the Indiana rule, take note of that, all courts, mandates the resurrection of a void ab initio statute. What Levin didn't do is ask this question: is an unconstitutionally void statute resurrected when a court overrules the constitutional infirmity? Sure, we're closer to Indonesia than Indiana, but Levin might have reached a different result had he plumbed the depth and tested the breadth of the Indiana rule in American jurisdictions. Levin told us, "We recognize that an analysis of constitutionality or organicity of a local statute must begin with the general rule that legislative enactments are presumed to be constitutional. Along the same lines, attorneys general routinely defend the statutes in their respective jurisdiction if such can be accomplished absent the use of an antiemetic. If it can be argued that the Dobbs decision is the talisman that resurrects Bell's law, then Levin should move to dissolve the district court injunction that prevented the enforcement of that law. Otherwise, the answer to his truncated question is the death of Bell's law. If he moves to resolve the injunction, then we'll have a judicial declaration of the viability of Bell's law. In the benediction of his opinion, Levin tells us, moving forward, difficult moral and policy questions such as the decision of whether to allow or limit abortion must be decided by the legislature, not the courts. Our legislature has spoken unanimously on the moral and policy question. The reason that the voice of the people, that is the legislature, is muted and mooted is apparent. It's not what Levin did, it's what Levin didn't do. I guess that should be Levin's campaign slogan. Vote for me, because it's not what I did in office, it's what I didn't do. Accompaniment by dogs. Go out to Gain and see if you can find a couple mangy mongrels. Pictures of them in your campaign ads. Just trying to help out, Levin. Okay, so I just wanted to read that because I have a feeling that, you know, we don't understand what the Attorney General is and what he isn't. He's not the final word on what the law is. He issues opinions because he advises the government. He's the government's lawyer, and he advises on matters of law that affect the government. But he isn't always right. He's wrong from time to time. And in this case, his mistake is that, like I mentioned yesterday, he found the magic words and he stopped looking. Whereas if he'd looked a little harder, he'd have found the Indiana rule, and he had a responsibility to state the Indiana rule and either agree with it or distinguish it. So it's what he didn't do in this case. So yesterday I went through that, and I picked up on something that ran in, I think it's the Post. Yeah, the Post ran this legislative candidates on abortion access, and they attempted to ask every candidate for senator what their position on abortion was. And I went through them yesterday, and it's pretty disheartening, the kinds of answers that you get. If I were to ask someone, if I were to ask these people, hey, what time is it? And they use the same technique of answering, they would have come up with something like this. Well, a lot depends on where you are. I would have to know exactly what your longitude is before I can even make an estimate of what time it is. And I would need to know the season, because sometimes there's daylight time and sometimes there isn't. And then I would have to know which hemisphere you're in, because it is on and on and on. Then I would want to know what kind of time, you know. I mean, just a simple answer, something like 1725 would be good enough, right? But no, there's no sense giving a short, correct answer when you can bore the hell out of your audience with a long, boring answer. But they're not just boring. They're making real attempts to play political cover. Because as I explained yesterday, abortion's what caused a wedge issue. You know, you got a lot of people on either side, and you have not only breadth of feeling, but depth of feeling. People feel very, very strongly about this issue, regardless of which side. In fact, one of them feels so strongly on the issue that she has published a quote that would be a supreme embarrassment for most people, but not for a real pro-abortionist. An attorney, Vanessa Williams, said, "It's impossible to separate our choice of whether and when to have children from every other choice in our lives." So everybody, so many here try to play the same game. They want to get the support of one of the sides without alienating the other. I got to tell you guys, you can't do it. If you are not pro-abortion, those guys are going to hate you no matter how many explanations you go into, no matter how sorry you say you are, etc. And the same on the other side. If you're not anti-abortion, all of this tripe about women's bodily integrity, keeping religion out of politics, it's not going to make any difference because they're not going to vote for you. The best you can hope for is ignorance on the part of the voters. Okay, so I got to Joe San Augustine yesterday, and here's Joe San Augustine. Joe is probably as direct as anybody here. Joe says, "I'm anti-abortion, but I cannot support any measure that does not allow an exception for victims of incest or rape when deemed necessary, medically necessary, to save a life. People on both sides of this issue feel deeply, so I believe voters should have the power to choose in a referendum. Let the democratic process decide the will of the people." If he'd have stuck with his first paragraph, he would have gotten a thumbs up here. I don't see how one can be anti-abortion and then advocate the incest or rape exception, unless you say, yeah, I'm pro-abortion, but limited to this, that, and the other thing. I'm pro-abortion for incest, rape, when the mother has other priorities, if the family is poor, on and on and on. You can't do that, Joe. You're not consistent. But that would have been a fair answer until he goes on to say, people feel deeply, therefore I want a referendum. Well, you can't be anti-abortion and want a referendum, because a referendum may be in favor of abortion. Moving on, we got Jose Pido Terlaje, no response. Alexander Duenas, no response. And then Fred Berdalio says, I support pro-choice for women. Sexist. He doesn't support pro-choice for men. So if a man gets pregnant, he's got to bear the child. He cannot have an abortion, no matter what. That's Fred's pronouncement on the subject. He says, I believe that women should be legal and entitled to access any medical services they need with the personal choice which they have a right to make involving their health status, inclusive of medical abortion procedures. Well, at least he didn't beat around the bush. I support the right of women to make choices they desire that involves their health and reproduction. Well, this is not about reproduction, Fred. Abortion is about ending reproduction.
Destroying what was reproduced.
Yeah, let's be clear on that. If the other policy makers disagree with my position and proffer legislation in the form of initiative or referendum, that would leave the abortion access question with voters. I would not object to that political process, because I'm confident that a majority of our women voters will choose the pro-choice position that I support. I guess you don't care about the men voters.
The referendum is only going to include women vote.
That's only fair. Yeah, because they're the only, I was going to say they're the only ones that get pregnant, but not according to Fred.
Well, you know, as a former fetus, Bob,
yes,
I figured I could have a say, but I'm not the right gender.
Exactly. Yeah, but you could be, Jose. It's not. Don't give up.
Could identify.
You could be. You could be the right gender.
I could even identify as a fetus.
Yeah. Amanda Shelton, no response, which is kind of surprising. John Ananich, no response. David Duenas, no response. There's a special place for you guys with your no responses. Kelly Marsh Titano, no parentheses anymore. I wonder what happened.
Hyphened.
Hyphen instead of parentheses. Maybe that key on her iPhone broke. No more parentheses. She says, being a survivor of sexual assault as a child and having friends that have suffered ectopic pregnancy, non-issue. How many times do we have to go through that, Jose?
But they keep droning on that same false narrative.
Yeah, ectopic pregnancy, coat hanger abortion, yeah, and other such real-life situations helps me understand firsthand that the issue is complex.
Well, if you include, like, the kitchen sink,
exactly,
it'll be very complex.
Yeah. Such complex issues must be decided upon by the individual, their loved ones. How can the individual have more their loved? I know the answer. Kelly wants us to know she's woke. It's too bad she didn't put her pronouns after her name. They, them, and their, apparently. And their healthcare provider. Those tackling these complex issues need to have safe, accessible options for reproductive health care that is the right choice for them. Yeah.
Again, and not even identifying what that choice is that she's advocating for.
Yeah, but of course we know what it is, Jose. Why don't you just come out and say, I'm pro-abortion? Disappointment, if you read the Pacific Island Times, which I'm a great booster of, I was really disappointed when I read Marvick's opinion this week. There's no such thing as pro-abortion.
That was a really strange statement to make.
It is, yeah. There's choice. Yeah. All right, Roy Gamboa, no response. Roy's probably busy preparing for Civil Service Commission hearing. Okay, let's head for Wrigley Field, and when we get to the center field bleachers there, I'm going to be looking for none other than another Joe taking a position on abortion. Good for another Joe.
We're already Pika's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better. Announcing the point on Alexa. In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
So here we are, Wrigley Field, Chicago, the world's most beautiful ballpark. And I'm just working through the list of candidates and their response on some really poorly worded questions. But next is Roy Gamboa. Roy Gamboa, no response. And I can only hypothesize that Roy is probably preparing for his Civil Service Commission hearing, where he will have to convince somebody that he didn't violate our so-called Hatch Act. Because Roy continued to work at the Lieutenant Governor's office after he filed papers to start his candidacy. Government employees, with a couple narrow exceptions, cannot be candidates for public office and keep their jobs. So Roy, I suppose, has an offense. I didn't really mean to, but Stephanie Flores asked me if I'd stay on for a while, so I did. And I could have probably stayed on there right up through the election had it not been for that darn Klitzkie, who sent a sunshine law request to the Lieutenant Governor asking for the papers that he sent to the Civil Service Commission to rat me out. And, of course, the Lieutenant Governor had to say, I didn't do that.
There goes the I didn't know defense.
Exactly. And then darn Klitzkie, you know, he wasn't satisfied there, so he filed a complaint with the Civil Service Commission. A guy can never catch a break around here. So, no thanks. I'm not going to talk about abortion. If I did and I came out with the wrong side, he'll probably just beat me up again anyhow. There's no safe place here, Roy Gamboa. And we've got Dwayne San Nicolas. Women should have full access to abortion. The choice and decision to have an abortion should rest solely on each and every individual woman. My position arises from my belief in individual freedoms, most especially when it concerns somebody's body.
You don't say.
Somebody's body. So long as it's not mine or my wife, so long as it's a third party, I'm all for it. I prefer to deal with the matter in the legislature rather than a referendum, because we are elected by the people to make sound and thought-out decisions, understanding both consequences and benefits of our actions.
Halfway there.
Yeah, the good second half answer. Item 19, or candidate 19, Franklin Mano, email returned, unable to deliver. He'll be a technological whiz in the legislature, won't he? Armando Dominguez, who's probably been running for the legislature longer than I've been alive. I can remember his candidacy way, way, way back. No, not longer than I've been alive, but a long, long time. Armando says, if possible, no abortion. I'm pro-life. Leave it to highly expert individuals to decide. My religious belief is that life is given by God. No one shall abort it. I'm going to vote for that guy. Sarah Nedidok. I was part of the effort to bring the pro-life movement to Guam in 1977. My focus then, as it is now, is to educate girls, women, boys, and men about positive relationships, abuse, and rape, making decisions about unplanned and unwanted pregnancies that will forever affect their lives. I've been on both sides of the spectrum and have worked with many who are faced with these difficult choices. Depends on what your longitude is, Jose, whether in your northern or southern hemispheres. I have known of those who self-abort after being found pregnant from a rape or incestuous relationships and have tragically hurt their bodies, minds, and souls forever. I have also known those who had abortions because having a child was not planned when they were in a complex relationship or having unprotected sex. There is no easy way to answer these critical questions facing our community today. Yeah, if it's not easy, then why bother, right? I only want to be, when I'm a senator, I'm going to tell the speaker, don't bring any of this hard stuff before the legislature. If it's hard, I'm out of there. You can just mark me absent. I only want to deal with easy stuff. She says, I would entertain legislation that would, one, educate and identify those who are likely victims of sexual abuse and get the victims and perpetrators in treatment right away. Two, it's going to be pretty difficult, isn't it? Some of the rapes I read about.
Clairvoyance.
Yeah. And, you know, a lot of times it's somebody in the same household, but sometimes it's not. Two, have steeper penalties for those who have raped children and adults. Pedophilia is a very serious disorder that most do not feel is treatable. Prevention by safeguarding our children and stepping up prevention efforts in our schools and community is the way forward. I believe the choices of our people facing unplanned and unwanted pregnancies is one that reflects their values and their beliefs. Most often they feel that their unplanned or unwanted pregnancy will bring even greater hardship to their lives. The answer must be made by that person with prayerfully the guidance of professionals who have counseled them with all the options and the likely results of each possible choice. A comprehensive educational program should be devised and presented in the schools and communities with a referendum to follow. Our people's voices, from youth to our elders, should be the guide of our lawmakers' further action.
Now, this answer on the surface is something that someone contemplated. However, she is in the wrong position as a Democrat, because the position of the Democrats is not to even have any kind of consultation or information. Just right then and there.
Yeah.
We're seeing this from the telemedicine injunction.
Yes.
That no consultation is allowed.
Exactly.
Go right into the decision.
Yeah.
No matter, don't think about it at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Hello. Is this the office of Dr. McCluckenbach? Yeah. This is Sarah Nedidog. My friend wants to have an abortion. Can she come in at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning? Oh, 2 o'clock? Yeah. Yeah. She'll be there. What time will she be home? That's it. It's just the same as kind of like a dental appointment. You just go in there, shut up, open your mouth, and away we go. Yeah, so this is a really long, drawn-out statement here to say I'm pro-abortion. I'm pro-abortion, but I'm looking for cover by advancing the referendum thing. So if anybody tries to pin me down, well, yeah, I am. I'm on your side, but it's a people should decide. Yeah, the only right answer on that one came from what was his name?
Armando.
No, Dwayne.
Oh, Dwayne.
Yeah, he understands people. People elect us to make the decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah. He would make the wrong decision, but at least he understands what senators do. David Chrysostomo, email unknown. That's a good start. Jesse Lujan, I'm pro-life. I'm not opposed to leaving the issue to an initiative or referendum, but I don't think the legislature should shy away from the issue.
And they did it in 1990. That's why we have a law.
Exactly. The voters should know where all the candidates stand. I'm pro-life, and other than with exceptions for rape, incest, and risk the mother's life, I think abortion should be illegal on Guam. B+. Yeah, once again, he falls into that same logical trap. Thomas Fisher. The U.S. Supreme Court decision in Dobbs v. Jackson doesn't revoke the right to an abortion in the United States. It ruled that Roe's constitutional framework was unsound. The court determined the question was to be decided by the states and territories. That is now law. I will never operate as if my position is the only solution to an issue.
That's why you're not running for governor.
Yeah. And that means you're going to be indecisive because you have to stand up in a legislature and say, Madam Speaker, I urge my colleagues to vote for this matter because I think, I believe, I want, etc. Madam Speaker, I'm not going to tell you what my position is. I'll wait until the roll is called 3 times, and then I'll pass. I believe this. I will never operate as if my position is the only solution to an issue. I believe this to be one of the issues of some elected officials. Their personal feelings act as the primary guard of the eventual passage or rejection of legislation. It should be about the greater good and the desire of the people. The greater good. He's for the people. In this case, the Supreme Court of the United States put the decision in our hands, and I believe the voices of the people of Guam should be heard through a referendum. We need to have referendums. Tom Fisher said, we don't need to have no stinking legislature. And Sandra So, no response. Michelle Hope Titano. Now, I want to make it really clear. Hope Titano and Hope Alvarez are two totally, completely different species, people. She said, I believe there should be no access to abortion service on Guam. One of God's 10 commandments is, you shall not murder. It's God's command. He gave it to us that we may avoid hurting one another. The child in the mother's womb is a human being. Why should they be exempt from God's law? Good answer. Chris Duenas, Chris Duenas, no response. Ken Leon Guerrero, abortion is a morality issue, not a societal issue. Pregnancy is a personal and morality issue within the family, not a societal affecting all citizens the way roads, affordable housing, unemployment levels, crime, education, or a pandemic are. And the government is least qualified entity to regulate morality issues, having tried for decades to control alcohol. Guns is a morality issue. Drugs is a morality issue. Gambling, prostitution, interracial marriage is a morality issue, and abortion's failing every time.
I'm not understanding the definitions he's giving here.
No. Yeah, he says, not a societal issue affecting all citizens the way crime does. I think crime is a societal issue.
Absolutely. You know, a great example of why abortion is definitely a societal issue is to look at China's one-child policy.
Yeah.
And it killed the population, and it actually increased crime with women being kidnapped because they didn't have enough in certain areas because they only had that one-child policy. They had to change it, of course.
Yeah, and Tim pointed out that anti-abortion is the pimp and the rapist's best friend. He laid that out about a week ago.
And let's talk about birth rates and death rates and mortality rates, infant mortality rates. When you have an abortion, you don't have a population. And we're seeing that in the U.S., we're seeing it in Europe, we're seeing it in places where abortion is looked away or nobody says anything about it.
Yeah, it's called the demographic winter. You need a replacement rate of 2.2 people to keep a society, to continue the population level of a society. We're below it. In the United States, if it weren't for our southwestern border, we'd have a problem.
And one more example, if
Yes,
I can
sir.
do it, is Bell Areola put it very plainly and said, what is the point of perpetuating a culture if there's no more of the people left to practice that culture?
Yeah.
Because our population of Chamorros on Guam has diminished greatly. Not just because people are leaving. Look at the statistics. In 2016, the majority of abortions were done by those women, mothers, who identified as Chamorro.
Yeah. Well, this is a little bit deep, but there's something called the categorical imperative. And the categorical imperative, it's Immanuel, people pronounce it Kant. I don't. I pronounce it Immanuel Kant. And his categorical imperative, and I'll paraphrase it, act only according to that precept by which you could require all others to comply. In other words, forget about the golden rule, because you never know who's on first, who starts it, right?
What?
So the categorical imperative moral precept is this: whatever you do it in such a manner that you had the power to make it the rule for everybody else. If it's okay for you, it has to be everybody else. So let's say we applied that to the pro-abortionists. The problem wouldn't be over in about one generation because there wouldn't be anybody left. But it's not a societal issue. Let's head for Churchill Downs.
Shop and Win is back at Micronesia Mall. Beginning August 6th, shop and redeem receipts for a chance to win instant prizes from Burger King or Foot Locker, or receive a grand prize entry form for our first raffle drawing on November 12th for your chance to win a 2022 Toyota Corolla LE courtesy of Atkins Scroll Toyota. Plus, 10 lucky runners-up will receive a $250 gift certificate from Goodwin Travel and Tour for tickets for Philippine Airlines.
Shop more, win more.
Only at Micronesia Mall. Terms and conditions apply.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Back to Ken Leon Guerrero. He's got some definitions that are kind of hard to follow. All Bill 291, the Guam Heartbeat Act, does is prevent women from having access to medically safe abortion services locally. It does nothing to protect the unborn from someone who has the price of a plane ticket to places abortions are legal. That's true. Had the bill been, quote, serious legislation with strong grassroots support, it would have been introduced as Bill number 1-36.
Are they ranked?
Of course, yeah. The most important bill gets introduced first, yeah. Instead of having a bill to waive business license fees for 1 year, introduced as the first bill of the 36th legislature, and had higher priority bills providing menstrual products to female school students, requiring pets to be registered and microchipped, and banning plastic bags, paper bags, and plastic food containers. I don't understand. That paragraph makes no sense. It's just a bunch of words strung together with no... It needs to have, and another clause, it would have, but it doesn't. Women know what's best for them when it comes to dealing with the circumstances of their personal situation. I know a woman who had an abortion as a teenager who readily admits she's a better mom for having waited to her mid-20s and was in a stable relationship before giving birth to a child than she would have been as a single teenage mom. I also know several women who struggle in a stress-filled poverty lifestyle, heavily dependent on welfare programs as a result of becoming single-parent moms in their late teens and early 20s. Well, you know, if you look at the statistics, most of the abortions are not performed on people in their teens. They're married people, late 20s and 30s. And if you had to ascribe a label to those abortions, the proper label would be, oops. Because as Tim pointed out, the nice thing about abortion really helps bad men because the evidence is gone.
And we saw that in the whole kerfuffle about that 12-year-old that wanted to get an abortion, but they didn't want to even talk about how she got pregnant.
No, exactly.
They protected that rapist.
Yeah, the mother's boyfriend.
Well, you know, this argument right here is the same one, very familiar, similar to the Margaret Sanger eugenics type thing where we have to get rid of societal woes by getting rid of a certain type of human or a certain class or group of humans.
Exactly. We're back to sustainability and agriculture again. Margaret said what we need to do is take the weeds out of the population. That's Margaret's approach to it. Our society is not prepared to provide the level of monetary, emotional, and medical support to eliminate abortion as an option for women.
Again.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, had Bill 291 been a serious piece of legislation, it would have just banned abortions outright. Well, timing, you know, this was before Dobbs, and this was a workaround in the era when Dobbs was still a law. Ken, you can't say stuff like this and want to be a senator because you either don't know or you're trying to fool us. Either way, it doesn't work. It would not have been exempt. It would not have exempted the government, any and all elected appointed officials or government employees from enforcing the law to prevent abortions instead of turning people into bounty hunters.
What does that even mean?
Well, what it means to me is after reading this, Ken has done a really good job of studying up. He's memorized all the Democrat talking points and thrown them out here. So, Ken, if you're really a serious candidate, don't pretend to be a Republican. Switch over and be a Democrat where you belong. Frank Blas Jr., no response. Vincent Borja, the shadow candidate, no response. I understand he's running for legislature, but you couldn't prove it by me. Marianne Silva Tyrone, no response. Joanne Brown, the Attorney General, issued an opinion stating the 1990 law prohibiting abortions cannot be enforced because it was unconstitutional when it was passed. That said, Guam's abortion laws do not prohibit access to abortion services. It allows it. A licensed physician simply needs to inform patients of available abortion services and comply with abortion reporting requirements. Guam law requires an individual report for each abortion performed to be completed by the mother's attending physician. The abortion report is confidential and does not contain the name of the mother involved. However, the name and address of the abortion facility or hospital and a number of other requirements are public information. As it stands, abortion is legal on Guam. As a pro-life supporter, I'm in favor of tightening up the abortion laws. Unfortunately, Talina Nelson, the main sponsor of the Heartbeat Act, has not acted on advancing the measure forward to be discussed and debated on session floor before the people of Guam. Well, I guess we got to blame Talina here, huh?
Yeah.
A little review of the law, except if you left out the Indiana rule, Joanne. Telo Taitagui. Yeah, let's hang on. Okay, yeah, Telo Taitagui is probably a pretty good place to end the show. Let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3. HD3.
He wants the document review stopped. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Attorneys for former President Trump asking a federal judge to prevent the federal government from reviewing documents seized from his Mar-a-Lago estate until a special master can be appointed.
Who would independently examine whether to return evidence back to the former president. Trump's request must be approved by the court. Federal Magistrate Judge Bruce Reinhardt issuing a new order Monday, signaling he likely will not release the Mar-a-Lago search affidavit in its entirety.
Fox's David Spunt reports the judge cited concerns about what impact releasing the entire affidavit would have on the investigation and potential witnesses. The former president argues that many of the documents taken in the raid are covered by executive privilege or attorney-client privilege. Dr. Anthony Fauci, the director of the National Institutes of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, says he'll step down at the end of this year.
Fauci will also depart as President Biden's chief medical advisor. Fauci says he is not retiring, but after more than 50 years in government, wants to pursue the next chapter of his career. In a statement, President Biden thanked Fauci, saying his many contributions to public health saved lives.
Fox's Jared Halpern, Dr. Fauci had earlier said he intended to serve until at least the end of President Biden's first term. Louisiana Republican Senator John Kennedy says, resignation or not, they'll bring Dr. Fauci before congressional committees if the GOP takes control of the Congress in the midterm elections. A sheriff's deputy was killed in Oklahoma City Monday. Sergeant Bobby Schwartz shot trying to serve eviction papers. A second deputy who tried to pull him to safety was wounded as well. A 35-year-old suspect has been arrested following a police chase. 3 people shot, 2 of them fatally in Midtown Atlanta Monday. The suspect has been arrested there as well.